Hello, everybody. Welcome to Streamline Your Healthcare Admin Processes.
I'm excited to be here today. This is going to be fun.
So phenomenal having you, Lita.
Well, it's important, right, to share knowledge and information with people.
Yep, and I think they're going to get a phenomenal amount of education and information they can take back and work with their practices. I think it's going to be great for everybody.
Yep, that's my hope. We know how it can be sometimes with everybody being able in healthcare being able to make it in to the same location all at once at the same time.
They have time management issues. That's why it's great for them to sit here and hear out what you can actually offer and helping them with the operations. All right, it's 1:02, and I'm a man that likes to be prompt. Okay, I've given everybody 2 minutes. So anybody that comes in the middle, they'll just have to catch the recording. A little bit of house cleaning. Everybody's on mute. And we're going to be keeping it simple. I only have a few slides, and we're going to keep this in an open forum because we want to get the most value from talking to Lita on things we can do about helping healthcare practice improve their operations. Okay. One of the things we want to address is the challenges that healthcare practices are having. And we've jotted down things that we've seen that healthcare practices that we've dealt with are leading with biggest issues they have. One of the biggest struggles they have is limited resources. They don't have a good business strategy in place. Staff training and staff development is always a challenge. The office, optimizing how the office functions and work, that is definitely a challenge for most practices. Making money is appointment scheduling and patient workflow. If you don't have people that want to come to your practice and you're not taking care of them in a good way, you won't have the revenue coming in that will maintain the office and make it work. Financial management, being able to go out there and actually now see the patients, but getting paid by the carriers, how to deal with the best practices, getting that cash flow in for the organization. Another big thing, and this is not just healthcare across the board, is cybersecurity. How do I now protect the information I have? And it's not only patient, because a lot of people look at HIPAA and think that's a critical thing. It's not just patient, it's also your staff. You have the social security numbers, you have the financial information, the practice itself, its interaction with their vendors, and most important, why cybersecurity should be important is reputation for the organization. Because going to a healthcare practice is about reputation. I'm going to a doctor because I feel comfortable with that doctor. The reputation of the doctor is something that's valid. Another hitting point we see is communication and coordination, how to get the staff, the doctors, and all the vendors being able to be on the same page in the conversation, what's necessary to give the best patient care. So these are some of the things we're hoping to kind of at least touch bases on and get the leaders' feedback and ideas of how can we actually get some tips and tricks of dealing with these things and addressing things in a practice. Why should you care? Well, the industry is changing between patient care and billing, and all these different regulations are coming down the pipe. It's getting very challenges for medical practices to be financially fit. You know, that's why there's a lot of acquisitions by larger healthcare practices taking those smaller ones, because they now have to find a way, how can they compete in this market where things are getting consolidated? So improving operations, if you're the office manager, hey, how can I have this office running better? And if you're the doctor or the owner, hey, I have a business now. How can I make it valid in the next few years where I'm still relevant in the market? Because so many things and so many changes are happening, and I need to see patients. I can't deal with all these different regulations. How do I reach out and find the right team to help me with these things? These are the things that we're hopefully going to share with you, and these are things why you should care about, being a part of these events and listening. I know you guys are going probably, who are we and why are we even doing this? This is about giving. People don't care about what you take, they care about what you give. And we're going to be putting a group of presentations together that's going to kind of educate and health organizations. We've found that, it's not just, hey, going out and try to get business, but if I can educate and we can share information that can help a company, that is the goal and objective of us. I'm a business owner as well, and I struggle with how to do things. And if I didn't have people around me that can give me great advice and would willing to share, I would never be where I am. So we're looking to be a resource and be able to share it with you guys. With that being said, Brian, let's get off the slides. And I'd like to, like I said, this format we're going to do, we're going to keep it really open. It's more of a back and forth with Lita and I. And this way it's not a stuffy slide, because nobody likes slide decks. You know, people like to communicate and conversate, and Lita is phenomenal. Just to give you a little background for myself, I'm Wayne Roy, I'm the CEO of TroyNet. TroyNet is an IT consulting firm in the healthcare arena. We help health practices on the operational side of dealing with technology. People think technology is about buying devices. That's not what it's about. It's, hey, how can I use it in my operations? And most people say, yes, they have IT support. That is fine. We're on the strategy side. Now that you have the stuff in place, what is the strategy you're supposed to have in place to actually make your practice work? Because I guarantee you, most of you guys have technology, you have computers, you have the cloud, but let me not speak for you, but I've seen that nobody's really utilizing it and have a plan and a strategy of how to make their practice successful using these tools. We're the guys that come in and help you with that. With that being said, I don't want to take away from Lita and your time. Lita, please let the group know a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself if you could, please.
Sure. So my name is Alita, and I was a medical consultant. I'm going to say became a medical consultant really during the pandemic in New York City. And it was, you know, an instant overnight change for the entire world. Undoubtedly, myself, especially because I had just been subcontracted by a group of practitioners in New York City in various different industries about 6 weeks before the pandemic hit. And so once that happened, I really came into, you know, the realization of, thank heavens I had already been into the practices before it happened. Thank heavens I was able to talk to the teams and assess all of the team members. That became very vital during that time. The fact that I already had been able to look at the pain points within the operation and know, okay, here's some of the areas we might have challenges with. Also putting together business strategies and build out plans, as well as supporting our teams operationally who were running into the ER and slaying it and going into the urgent cares and, you know, even the independent, or not independent, but internal medicine practices that we built out telehealth programs for. I mean, it was incredible, and it was ever changing, and it was happening so fast, as all of these people who are with us, I'm sure know. Super fascinating time, but let's just say I got really, really ingrained in understanding medical operations very intensely, and for all of the right reasons.
So let me ask you real quick, Lita, with all this experience and all the things you're involved with, what's the biggest challenge? Because I know I kind of spotted off some of the things that we see as the biggest challenge in health practice. From your experience, what's the biggest things you see as the challenges that health practices have right now?
Yeah, so I'm on that note going to lead with the number one, and that's cash flow, because cash flow always makes or breaks, right? Everything, kind of the whole hamster wheel, if you will. So I think it's really important for people to understand their billing cycles. Out of the pandemic, I wound up having a medical consulting organization in New York City, as well as a billing company, because the minute I started digging into billing practices, and this was with multiple billers, I was finding a lot of just quite simply mess. And oftentimes the offices, the doctors, the managers, nobody had really spoken with the biller, or even if it's an internal person, there's not an in-depth conversation ongoing, or kind of like an audit system. And that's the cash flow. And so if that gets in a gap, or if there's stuff that gets stuck, the billing cycle is lengthy. And if there's something that gets stuck, then it's going to create a gap in cash flow, right? And oftentimes people don't know how many denied claims they've had. And that is a potential massive loss across the board. And that's something that I would encourage every single office manager to do, is like have some of those very real conversations, and don't get so busy, because oftentimes I see people get so busy that they think that they don't have time, right, to come back and follow up on the biller, have that conversation with the biller, make sure that they're getting like all of the information and that they're asking the questions. You don't have like, you can't afford to not have those conversations and to not be on top of exactly where everything's happening with all that cash flow. That's
So
my number one.
So is that a operational thing where they don't have the proper workflows to deal with a billing company, or is it they don't have a billing company, or the billing company they have is not good? What is it, one of those, a mix of those, or where do you see that?
It could be an absolute mishmash of all of it, right? It depends on the system that somebody has set up, but most times what I find is people really don't have systems set up, an operational system. So for those who do, and the office managers who do, and who realize the importance behind that, that's great. I'm just letting everybody know this is an like key number one monumental area within your organization. Everything else evolves around this. So that's why because of my findings across the board so many times with huge gaps in money and people not being able to answer my questions, that's the number one. So be asking questions all the time and know where your money's at.
Good, because what this sounds like, and I found that in the technology side of it as well, they hire a billing company and they assume billing company going to do everything when they don't realize you still have some responsibility from the practice as an office manager or whoever is assigned to it to be involved. If you don't have a strategy and a process of dealing with your billing company, just like they don't have a strategy and a product. What I hear a lot is, I have an IT company and they think that's the solution, but the solution is, and that's why we come in, because we're strategists, we come in and build a strategy around having that tech support involved. It sounds like they then, and I understand it's limited resources. They're not assigning people say, hey, this is what we need to do in-house to make sure billing works right, even if you have a billing company. Is that correct?
Correct. Either way, it's like there needs to be a process and a system and certain questions that are being asked and certain things that are being checked on a regular basis. And you'll find, or I found again, like when I was asking some key questions, or as I started to really look at things that were being provided to me, and I started really just drilling down and coming back to it and not letting go of it. Because I think oftentimes what happens is that practices will get so busy, right, and get pulled, and people will get pulled and drawn from those money conversations back into the practice to do people management or whatever, and it doesn't get followed through on. And so it's almost like I've learned in dealing with the insurance companies, right? We have follow-up systems like crazy, because if we're not constantly following up to get the answers and to continue to push to get the answers to the questions we've been asking, they'll hope that we give up and that we forget about it, sort of, right? And it depends on who you're working with and whatever organization it is. It doesn't matter if it's insurance, it doesn't matter if it's anything. It's customer service is customer service, and it's like a box of chocolates, and you're going to get whoever you're going to get on the phone that day, and you do the best you can to get the information. But the one thing I will say is ask the questions so that you fully understand. And I would suggest just, map it out a little bit. Just take a quick peek and be like, okay, we had X amount of claims last month, right? And so if I had this many claims, and know your average payout, your average dollar payout, this is a miss I find also. So understanding your average dollar payout with all of your insurances combined, there's going to be an average payout that you get for all of your payouts on all of your insurances. Kind of just take that number then and run a quick tally. And if you find that you don't find that you're getting that payment within a 6-week cycle at, like at the least, right? Or I would say max within 6 weeks of your billing cycle, then question it. Like, hey, it looks like we're missing claims. It looks like we're missing money. Do we have denials? All of that.
This sounds like something you and I actually touched base on a little while back, is staff development and training and
Yeah.
assignment of roles and responsibilities, which a lot of practices don't have clearly defined strategies around that. Because if you can talk a little about that, the importance of staff development, and if you can add 1 or 2 tricks that you might have put in place for staff development, because everything from, hey, operational to the billing, if somebody doesn't have that role, that's where the gap, and you just hit on it, that's where the gap.
Yeah, so, I'd say it starts with hiring and then onboarding. And so really being more meticulous about the personality type that you're bringing into your operation, because as we know, it can be high turnover. So really paying attention to what your position needs and really being honest with people about the hours that they're going to have to work, and then really encouraging them to be honest with you. And I always say, in an onboarding process, have a checklist of absolutely everything it is that you're going to cover, and have it broken down according to digestible bits of information. Any time that you can resource, and you should have an archive of training videos for either your software that you're using or anything like that, to make the onboarding process easier, especially if you have time where you can set somebody in a side room and they can actually watch a few videos. I recommend doing that. It's about work smarter, not harder, right? And creating that flow of efficiency, but getting everybody onboarded properly. Anytime somebody is onboarded properly and not just flung into a mess, it feels far better to them. They're going to be more apt to actually understand that this environment and this culture is about teamwork, which is one of the things that is a main component that comes along with the training, is that whole teamwork factor. And, really the best way I know how to describe it is the best teams that I have had the pleasure of cultivating and working with, and sometimes huge teams, is the fact that everybody comes to the playing field, everybody understands the mission and the purpose of why we're here. Everybody learns to march together to the beat of the same drum. And when somebody is not the team, once the team is super solid, the team just kind of doesn't tolerate it. And if somebody is not a team player, or they're standing around and they're just not pulling their weight, like that quickly stands out within any industry, and medical is absolutely no different, So all of those things, really training the front desk. The front desk is where what affects the money in 2 ways: phone calls coming in, and your phone systems being able to answer people, being able to respond to people, how you're answering the phone. I am going to hammer on customer service over and over and over again, because in medical, we seem to have forgotten that we should be, it's not just quick, rapid patient care. These are people, right? On an overall whole, we should be really paying attention to the whole person and giving the best possible service that we can when they come through the door. And that should be like grace and kindness along the way, but that's all training. You have to teach that oftentimes.
Lady, you brought up phones and front desk, because we've
Yeah.
done projects with organizations. We come into health practice and looked at their phone system. Every health practice has a phone system, but we've run reports for our company. I had one company that they had a phenomenal amount of abandonment rates. That means somebody is called in, either was put on hold or is put into the wrong queue, and they hung up, and they were losing tons. I forgot the exact amount of calls they were losing per day. We
Yeah.
came and ran reports and actually was able to show them, hey, you need to increase staff. What we wound up doing is creating a call queue for them. So they actually separate call queue, because one of the things they didn't want to hire people for that, but we showed them how much money they were losing. They were losing far more money than it would cost to hire 3 new people.
Yes.
So think about that. They say average is 4 times the amount for each employee. So they could hire 3 new people. So how much money they were possibly losing? Say if an average person is maybe 60K to 55K per person. They were losing phenomenal amount of money because they didn't have an adequate way of managing. Remember, we're very competitive. I know myself, I'm spoiled. If I call your practice and I'm put on hold, you know who I'm calling? Your competition down the street, because I have No patient. That we're in the age of digital and everybody wants instant gratification. And
Mhm.
if that practice doesn't pick up and somebody doesn't address my need, or you put me on hold and I'm in distress, that's the worst thing you can do for patients. So I agree with the phones. So let me ask you a question. Going back to the training and development, do you see a correlation between, it's very difficult to hire people right now in any industry, and especially in healthcare, for good qualified people. Do you see a correlation between the retention of staff in relation to the amount of training and development they have?
No question, right? Because the more a team is trained, the more a team works in sync, the more efficient it is, the more fun that team can have, which is another component to having like a happy culture, right? And environment. And you get so dialed in when you work with a good team that it becomes very efficient, very fluid, very fun. Like it's so good when you can get to a point of where you're like, you can smile, you can help each other out. You can know that you guys just like, whoa, I can't believe we just pulled that off. And like, wow, like we didn't like have huge wait time either. The wait times that are in the waiting rooms and the whole operational flow and structure around that is like step back. I would encourage, practice managers, owners, step back with a fresh set of eyes before you walk in your doors of operation and think about all of the ways in which you could improve and streamline the operation as if you are the client walking in the doors the first time. And that's how I would look at it. From a training perspective and going back to the front desk, if they aren't fully onboarded, you're going to have gaps in your billing cycle, which again impacts your money. So that's one thing that like my team and my billing team is instructed and knows how to do, is that it's always about helping to facilitate that front desk training. Because when we come across a gap and we get a denial back, then if it's touching the front desk in any way, we automatically pitch it back with information of, hey, here's what went wrong. And this person needs to be trained to the best of our ability. We always do that. It's like a partnership, right? To get a team trained and get them really good. And once you do, like people who are having fun and have a good teamwork environment, like they don't want to leave. I've had teams that have made far less in some situations because it was all that an organization could afford, but they literally had such a tight-knit crew and teamwork that they were like, they didn't want to give up the quality of life, essentially, because you spend 8 to 10 to 12 hours, depending on what position you run and if you're a practitioner, right? Like, and sometimes it's even more. Like your team is imperative about your success all the way around.
Yep, I agree. I'm going to recap on 2 takeaways if everybody didn't get it. First thing, your front desk is your first line that people see.
Yes.
They should be the most trained people there because they're the first image of your organization. So they should get training up the wazoo of how to do customer service. You should be hiring people that are smiling, okay? Hire them for attitude, not for aptitude for front desk.
Right.
Because you can teach aptitude, you can't teach attitude.
Yes, and you can't teach people how to stay calm under pressure, right? And like those front desk situations can get a little, a little interesting sometimes, depending on how busy the practice is. So yeah.
They can affect your cash flow because people will leave your practice due to front desk. Yes. And the second takeaway is phones. I'm an advocate for technology, so the phones, yes, you have a phone system, but is your phone system the kind of system where you can actually run reports that can help you see where your cash flow is going? Because your appointments and your retention of your patients is important. Can you see and run reports and know when do you need to fund and hire another person, or you just knee-jerk reaction and hiring people for answering the phones? You don't even know what your call volume is and what your abandon rate is on your phone system. I don't care what phone system you use. I care more about reporting and analytics because that affects your bottom line.
Yes.
Okay. So do you have any tips around appointment scheduling and patient workflow. What's some of your ideas, something that you might have run through that, hey, when it comes to now setting appointments and dealing with patients that you see health practice are kind of missing the mark on?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would say here is, for me, it's very important that practices have somebody who's orchestrating patient flow. And that should be separate from a front desk. If you have a front desk who's trying to also orchestrate patient flow and you guys get slammed, that easily gets left off to the side. So I always recommend having somebody who actually runs that position, who's on your team and on staff. That person, again, should be very pleasant, right? Because we're dealing with people who don't feel well, and being able to really know what rooms the doctor's in, what waiting rooms are open, whether or not they've been cleaned, but not just waiting for a team member to clean it. That's an orchestrator again, right? So when it, like, orchestrating the patient flow, it's like literally understanding everything about where you might need hands and or eyes or ears next in order to keep that patient flow going. Like I said, whether it be cleaning out the room, prepping it for the next patient to be able to go in, and the doctor knowing who is in what room and where to move next. And just having somebody guide that can make a huge difference in your wait times. And the wait times, as we all know, they're inevitable sometimes, but we should be doing our best to plan reducing that. I think the average wait time, the last time I saw a survey, Wayne, was like 45 minutes. And, people have structures in their lives that they try to adhere to, and they don't feel well. So, that piece to me is like, it's like a game changer.
Yes. And one thing that I see that most people don't correlate the two together is, yes, there's patient care, but there's also, it's a good way to put it, revenue for the organization. The more patients you can see, the more effective you are to the practice. So keeping that workflow, it's not only, it's a happy balance of, hey, I need to see patients, but you don't want to give terrible patient care. So to give the best patient care, you have to have a process in place that can move everybody, address them, make them feel special.
Yes.
Be able to move them along. So now you can have doctors lined up back to back to back. And when you don't have that process in place, mistakes happen, patients get upset, and you lose revenue, and you lose patients. Not only, hey, you have doctors that's not lined up back to back, but the patients are upset.
And you get backed up further, because then you get one upset patient and forget about it.
Yeah.
I'll bring out my New York accent for that one. Like, forget about it, right? Like,
but that's also the process. There should be a process in place for if you do have a disgruntled patient, what do you do? What's the process around that? And I know you've held practice, write those things up. Hey, this thing happens. How do I now navigate this? I can't access this patient room who was assigned for this. How do I now navigate? A lot of practice don't think that far through or have plans in place. It takes time to do the plan, but once it's done, it's done. Now it's rinse and repeat.
Yes. So oftentimes I find practice managers getting caught up in the tasking, and they're the taskers, right? And they feel like, I don't have time to train, or this person isn't going to get it. If this person isn't going to get it, it's probably the wrong person on the team. Especially if it's like you've shown them like 2, 3, 4 times and they're still not getting it, right? So it's about understanding when you need to cut ties and you need to bring new people in who will get it. That's one thing. The second is that, the coaching and the training piece is what's going to free you up on your time. And so I always have this thing where I say, like, train the trainer, right? There should always be training, somebody who can train and develop on rotation with the team at all times, right? Because training is very hands-on. Not only that, but the onboarding process, if you're going through that checklist, that onboarding for a front desk staff, like, depending on how busy that office is, that onboarding process could be a good week to a week and a half to 2 weeks, even, depending on how fast somebody learns, right? And how dedicated we are to truly making sure that they are completely trained they have checked off on everything and initialed that they've been trained on it. And they're not going to require much more beyond that. They're going to dive in then, and they're going to fully like get into it. Right. And really like they're going to be like the hands-on person who's just like they're like ready to hit the field, like they want to help when you have the right people.
Yep. And this segue into my next thing on communication and collaboration, coordinating all that, because a lot of practices have these great ideas and you're saying a lot of great things, but they try to do it verbal. And let's talk about communication. I see too many practices out there using Gmail, a Gmail account at doctor@gmail.com. First, it's not professional. B, that tells me you don't have a platform in place to communicate externally and internally to your staff.
Yeah.
Because developing all these things allows you to have a platform. I do a lot of team build out, Microsoft Teams, because I just find it to be phenomenal. I'm not pitching them, but at least that allows you now, when you have those training material, it's not waiting, because you get swamped as a practice manager trying to teach these things. Why not create these things, videos, documentation, and have a central location to collaborate with the practice? Another gap is communication. How do you communicate to the doctor in the office and out, where it's not required when you speak to them that moment, but hey, I need to send them a note. I need to send them a message. I need to speak to my team, whether one-on-one or globally, and I need to track these things. I need to make documentation available. I need training material available. I say, hey, Mary, front desk, remember we went to that training? Okay, it's in this location, let's review it. Can you talk a bit about communication and coordinating communication within a practice?
Yeah, so that relies heavily, I find oftentimes on a software program, right? And what software program people are using. The one thing that I will say, like, limit as much as possible is phone to phone communication. And I know that you can be a huge proponent of that, Wayne, because you need to make sure that it's better to be safe than sorry, and keeping all communication inside the same umbrella or within the same software program whenever possible on the same platform, so that all of your communication can really remain. I think you'd agree, Wayne, when it's all on one platform, it's much easier to like put out any potential dangers when you have one access point to go to versus multiple access points, right? To try to eliminate or mitigate any kind of harm in any way. So, the communication processes become super important. There should be communications broken down and subdivided, in my opinion, amongst teams, right? And so front office, then you've got your medical practitioners, you've got your MA teams, depends, right, on the practice and who you have. Then there should also be one that's amongst the practitioners themselves, because then you always have, the scheduling information that needs to be conveyed as well. And so it's just about having a really fluid and fluent system that's as condensed as possible, and everybody knowing where they go to for the information and how often they should be accessing it. So again, it's about training and development. When I say that, I'm going to say follow up and follow through. If you're not following up and following through with your people, then you're not training them, because I guarantee you somebody is dropping a ball somewhere and you haven't caught it. And because you haven't caught it, it's continuing to be dropped. And so it's like an audit system is another thing I recommend in the training process, and a good audit system where you come through and you're auditing things randomly and periodically. And you can even you can use this in all aspects of your business and every single department, and have a good tight audit and know, and use that as a training opportunity, a follow-up training opportunity as well.
Yep. Like they say, documentation beats conversation. And going to segue into another thing that we see a lot is in that communication. A lot of people say, well, I have an EMR. EMR is not meant, most EMRs, I've seen like one, and they're very expensive. They actually allow for inter-office communication in the way that the practice needs. The EMR is for the patient. We're talking now how, as a business, because yes, medical practice is a business. How is your business running and how you communicate for business? That is not your EMR. You need to have your own platform that you now communication as a business. If you change your EMR system, your software platform, that doesn't matter. How do you now inter-office communication? And then how do you communicate securely? I need to say something to a doctor that may have patient information. How do I communicate that and document that in a secure manner? And now we're going to segue into cybersecurity, because that's a big thing. And I want to bring people back, because this is my world of dealing with it. Compliancy is not security. Compliancy is, hey, you're meeting regulations. So a lot of people say HIPAA, so I'm good. HIPAA is for the government. Now, as a practice, your security for the practice, how you're securing staff information, vendor information, and communication to your patients. Because if that ever fails, that's going to be a financial impact on the practice itself. There's a lot of fines out there. A lot of hackers are making tons of money, and the reputation would be damaged. Imagine, I want everybody to imagine if your doctor was breached. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. This is actually a true story. Our security team reached out to our practice. We were going to do an assessment for them. They didn't do it. They had an in-house support company, which is not a security company. They think support and security is the same thing. Cybersecurity is different from having a support company. They didn't. About 2 or 3 months later, they reached out because they were infiltrated. They had a breach. When we visited the practice, it was eerily quiet. You know why? They had no computers. They were unable to access. People say, hey, my stuff is in the cloud. That's great. But what do you use to connect to the cloud? Your devices. If those things have been breached, you cannot use those anymore. Your practice is down. Your company is down until that's fixed. They were down for over a week. Okay. Now, they could use personal device to connect up to the cloud and do work, but think about it. Your insurance does not cover you because now you've gone beyond outside of the compliance required for your health practice to use those external devices. I won't say whether they did or not, but people do what they have to do. But they were down due to the fact they didn't do due diligence, making sure that they're healthy as a company, forgetting compliancy, that they're doing the right thing. So let me segue into what's your feel and what's your assessment for how practice should be dealing with now this cybersecurity thing.
Well, from my perspective, I was again, like realizing, and that's one thing that I'm going to take it back to the pandemic, as much as I don't want to live there and in that space, I will say that that's one thing that a spotlight was shined on globally across the world in almost every industry is our tech support and our infrastructure, right? And one of the things for me during that time frame is like, do I have a partner? Do I have somebody who is actually going to get back to me, who's actually an active, like they're actively in it with me, they're helping me to build, they're helping me to secure things, they're helping me to design, they're helping me to save people, right? And so I would say, take things back to kind of like a ground zero, and who do you want to be working with? And what do you want that working relationship to be like in a situation like that? That's a great thing to ask yourself before you ever engage with partnership in a vendor, an outside vendor, or subcontracting somebody like me, like a medical consultant, any type of situation like that ever. These people are going to become an extended member of your team. And so you really want those people to be people who you can count on and who are going to support you in what is potentially an extreme situation. And when you don't have that partnership, it gridlocks everything.
Yep, I agree. My tip on that is anybody that's looking to have an IT company that supports them, 80% of what they do should be consulting, 20% should be support. So if you have a company, all they do is support you, you really don't have a partner. Because, hey, if they built it right, it wouldn't be breaking. Other than people sitting in a seat, you can't control human error. But you should have somebody that's giving you advice. And one of the things we've seen is companies not having the ability to have resources. So really picking a strategic partner that helps you with your company, helps your practice grow, that's critical and that's important. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree completely. And I'm going to segue because we aim to talk about cybersecurity. Just so you know, our company also offers a free basic cybersecurity assessment for healthcare practices. At the end, we're going to give our contact information, and there's going to be a link there. If they ever want a free assessment, let me know. They can just go to the link and connect up. But real quick, before we wrap up, talk a little bit about limited resources, because a lot of practice don't realize that they need to find the right partners. They go, well, I don't have the budget, but you can't afford. They say they can't afford to it, but they can't afford not to. Especially the smaller you are, the more advice you get. You can't afford to make mistakes as much as a large healthcare practice. So you need more advice than anybody else. Can you talk a little bit about that for what you've seen?
Yeah, and then I also want people to know that if they don't have a chance to answer or ask questions, that like will come back full circle for them. I'm assuming we're going to throw up our contact information. Well, and I know I'll make myself available. I'm sure Wayne, you will too, for any follow-up stuff.
Yep. Throw anything in the chat and we'll get back to you guys on it.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. The thing about we were talking about, you said the cash flow. So yeah, that becomes vitally important. And we talked about the training pieces around that. There's other things I will tell you that like can be watched and monitored on a daily basis. I would be looking at, do we have any open charts, any open claims, anything that didn't get closed out throughout a day's time? Sometimes that can cause backup in systems, things that aren't caught. It could be somebody was a no-show, it didn't get closed out in your system. This way your reports are always staying clean and concise, and you can use them and resource them and truly know where you're at and where you stand with all of your cash flow needs and things.
Excellent. Well, we're reaching up on the 45-minute mark, and I want to give a chance to throw the contact information up. Lita, thank you for being here. Everybody, we're going to throw the contact information. Brian, can you throw that up there for me, please? There we go. Beautiful, beautiful. So if you want, my email is there and our contact number is there. Reach out. We'll connect to Lita. Lita is phenomenal. She's helped so many health practices figure out how to get a strategy around their internal operations. So feel free to reach out, shoot an email with any questions. We'll get it to Lita. And if you ever want to do a quick, Lita, are you offering a quick 15-minute consulting?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, for anybody who has questions, they can reach, and I put it in the chat. Sorry, Wayne. I thought that's what you were asking.
Yeah, that's fine.
You can access me through Wayne just as easily. And yeah, I always will do a free, 20-minute roughly consult and come with your questions. That's the way that I can help you the most.
Shoot us an email and we'll give you a contest schedule for Lita. You can sign up for a quick consulting with Lita. She can go through your practice and give you some good tips and tricks. And again, on the Security South Healthcare practice, go to troynet.com/assessment. We'll offer a free cybersecurity assessment for the healthcare practice if you're interested. Lita, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I would love to ask too, if there's topics that you guys would like to hear us talk about in the future and get, you think it's something that would really be beneficial for the majority of the practices to be educated on, please feel free to let us know.
Definitely, because we'd like to keep this going and picking topics that you guys are really interested in, let us know, and we'll create some topics around that. I think billing is something that's important. Also, you and I chatted about it. We're going to do a session on AI and how that's affecting health practice and how you can integrate that into your operations, because AI is going to be big. I think it's going to have a big impact on how operations work within health practices. With that being said, you guys have a wonderful day. Lita, it was phenomenal being with you. You're awesome.
Thanks, Wayne.
I've given you a virtual clap.
Ditto, right back at you. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.